Hello everybody, this is Sidney from Nevi and welcome to this webinar. Effective negotiation is critical, zero to hero. Now this was planned to be live, however I'm in Budapest airport in the early hours of the morning. The weather has disrupted my flights, so I'm recording this as you can see here. And hopefully it'll be as fun as being live, and I'm hoping to land in time in the Middle East to be there for the questions afterwards. Okay, so that's the plan. So enjoy the webinar, it's very interesting and you'll learn a lot about negotiation, particularly how to win the win-win in negotiation. So when we're looking at negotiation, we're going to focus on a few areas here, or bring these in. Negotiation, of course, contract management, reducing risks, and win-win outcomes. And we're going to use the negotiation win-win pyramid to build these ideas up. We see the pyramid goes from zero all the way around to hero. And in the middle, we have some winning strategies. We start with building the win-lose. So literally starting from zero value, moving up. Then we go on to losing the win-lose and how our default position is actually to lose the win-lose. And then we turn that around and we look at how we win the win-lose. Now these things we're going to discuss in the webinar. Then we move on to building the win-win. So we're collaborating here with our partner to create some value, and then at that point we're quite vulnerable to still being taken advantage of, but we can look to see how once we've built the win-win, how we can actually win the win-win, and then we'll look at some winning strategies linked generally but also linked to Kraljic. So we're going to start by building the win-lose, as we said. And what we see from here, we start with zero value. We see that we have a minimum price to start with. This minimum price is basically our BATNA, it's basically our walkaway. It's linked to our best alternative. So at that point, at the point we come into the negotiation, we have zero extra value. If we left, would go to our alternative, which is the bottom line default position. If we stay and negotiate a better deal, that better deal then starts creating extra value. But at that point, we have zero value. And we're looking mostly, initially at least, at price. And we see here, we're moving to a made up fictitious figure, but it's 20 worth of value. So if we get an improvement in the deal in terms of price, we will get some benefit to the deal. Moving on to slide 11, what we've done now is introduce some broader value. We haven't created lots of value here. It may simply be payment terms or some delivery condition or something not really creating that much value, but it has some importance to us. So as a more nuanced, more general, more valued proposition here, we still start at zero, because if we walk away or they walk away, we end up with no extra value from this negotiation, from this potential deal. But what we've seen here, because of the other variables, the other negotiables, the other value we brought in, we can see perhaps we'll get up to 40 in terms of value. Still looking at effective negotiation, still building the win-lose. What we see now, zooming back out, is that here we're going to focus on some real key building blocks, foundations of negotiation, which are there even for the most complex value-adding negotiations. So things like objectives, looking at alternatives, creating alternatives, building alternatives, BATNA, best alternative to negotiated agreement, how that converts into the walkaway, and how we start bringing in variables to bring in a little bit of extra value. And we'll see there in the corner we have zero, which is the starting point. So we've done well, particularly in preparation to build the win-lose. We started to understand our position and started to work out what value is extra there and how we can possibly get it. But we're looking now at losing the win-lose. Now, obviously, we don't want to do that, but we inevitably will unless we have the right knowledge, skill set, and other factors. Now, moving on to slide 14, we're losing the win-lose because we've created this idea here, and just to fit this model, we've said we didn't know this yet, but there's 100 value on the table. So that's the value that we could possibly get from this negotiation. If we see on the right side here, we see in red, we see the value of 0. Now that's the 0 point of value for the other party, because they come in similar to us with this negotiation with hopes, optimism, but they also have some sort of alternative, a good alternative or bad alternative, but they have an alternative. And if they go to the alternative, they will take no value from this deal, of course. So their starting point also is 0. Between the two, so on this table, if we think of it as a table, there is 100 worth of value. Now, moving on to the next slide, we'll see that the value on the table is going to be theirs. Okay, we're making the assumption here that they've prepared well, that they're maybe more experienced than us, they know how to negotiate. So we may be pushing to potentially 40. We had no idea what was on the table before, of course. 40 was hopefully we can get that. Now we see there's 100, but we don't actually see that yet. But they either see what we have or have better negotiation skills, and they're pushing for 90. So if we left it at this, they'd probably push us back, and if we got 20 from this deal, we wouldn't be unhappy. On the next slide, we'll see that what they're going to do is focus on, obviously, in their position. It's the mirror of what we did in the first steps, and they're going to focus on their position, their value, their strengths, and they create a ZOPA. ZOPA is a zone of potential agreement. This is the battleground for the negotiation. This is the table where the value sits. Where we end up in this depends on who negotiates best, who has the most power. And this is also about your weaknesses. Yes, in a negotiation, you have weaknesses, they have weaknesses, but if they know yours and they sell their strengths and they play the game very well, they will end up getting most value. So in this situation, they in effect would get 80 of the value and you perhaps would only get 20. Better than nothing, but you've lost the win-lose. Now we can start winning the win-lose. Okay, we've built it, we've fought against it, and here we're going to succeed. We're going to win the win-lose. So we look at the next slide, we'll see we're going to do that by negotiating better. So initially they were pushing to get 90 of the value. Okay, they ended up with less than that, but they're pushing to get 90, ended up with about 80, we said. And this time we are able to, through the knowledge of where their walkaway is perhaps, through the confidence, through the skill sets of moving well, which we'll look at in a moment, we're able to push for much more than before. Next slide, we see that means we're going to capture most of the value. And here we have the point of 65. So of the 100 value which we have is there, which has been created, we can capture 2/3 of that, so 65 of that. So initially we started with 0, of course, and if this negotiation ends, it will be 0 unless we can capture some of that value. And here we've captured most of it. So then we looked at when we lose the win-lose, we end up with maybe 20. Now we've negotiated much more effectively to capture 65. So on the next slide, going back to the whole effective negotiation pentagon, we see that we're going to do this, things we're going to bring in here, managing movement, understanding that negotiation is about making concessions and how you concede, how you can just make a one-way movement, or you can compromise, or you can trade value, or you can use influencers to persuade them to move towards you. And the question always is, who goes first? And we look here at how, if you go first, get it right. If you don't, have a plan B, similar with going second. All this management of movement gives us more negotiation power and more negotiation success. We talked about influencing, talked about using logic, emotions and threats to persuade the other party to move towards us. And also on the right hand side here, we're looking at how we prepare. Preparation is key. 80% of the success of a negotiation does actually come from preparation, and we'll see that. You've seen that from negotiation classes, and you've seen how to negotiate effectively requires good preparation and what needs to be done to prepare well. Also, we play a game when we're negotiating. Negotiation is a game, of course, and it's hide and seek. We're hiding our own weaknesses. We're preparing to be questioned on those, and we're trying to turn them into strengths. We're also looking for the weaknesses of the other party, what's on their sheet, what they're interested in, what's value to them, and also trying to understand their background and how far their walk away will enable us to push them back. And also at this point, if we look at slide 21, we see that we're going to bring in the idea of power, negotiation power. Now, there are lots of sources of negotiation power, and you go to different sources of theory. You see there's 7 or there's 10 or there's 4. We're going to look at some key ones here. So sources of power for win-lose, particularly the alternative. Now, this is probably the strongest source of power there is. If you go into a negotiation with a strong alternative, then you have the power. You can take it or leave it. You can push, gives you confidence. This is really a key source of power. If you do not have that, then you'll be looking to have knowledge power. And here we'll look at knowledge power in 3 ways during this session. But knowledge power, you need to know which knowledge to hide and to how to hide it. Knowledge that you have, you mustn't share, and if you're questioned on it, you must be prepared to give answers which aren't lies, but disguises, hides the certain weaknesses you have and certain value drivers that you have, that you know that if the other party found out, it would make them stronger. So we also have the knowledge that we're going to seek and how to find that. So we're going to try and search for knowledge and get more knowledge. We also look at sources of power, personality. One of my favorite sources of power linked to personality, or a part of personality. You've got authority and other things there as well, but likability. Never underestimate how important likability is. If people like you in a negotiation, they will look for reasons to do a deal with you. If they don't like you, they'll look for reasons not to do the deal with you, or not to give as much as they might have. And the last source of power here is the power of movement, how you can be the one that controls that movement. Hey, well done us. We won the win-lose. And in many negotiations, win-lose is the right strategy, and obviously then winning the win-lose would be the right strategy from that. If there isn't much value to be added, and it's more transactional, commercial, or leverage, where you have power of choice and the collaboration opportunities are less, then you are going to be looking at win-lose, and then you make sure that you win the win-lose. However, when we ask delegates on negotiation training, are you win-lose guys or win-win? And nearly always people say win-win, because they realise the value is there, and also it sounds more professional, more sophisticated than win-lose. However, win-lose can be the right strategy, but here we're looking at how we build the win-win. If we look at next slide 23, then we're looking at building the win-win. We're looking to create more value. So we've drawn this here. So you started with the rectangle. Your zero value position on the left in blue, theirs on the right in red, and we said there was, in this case, about 100 of value there to be fought over and captured. What we're saying here in win-win, and this is something you're involved in a lot, is working together, and we're primarily talking about our relationship with suppliers, but internally stakeholders just as important. What we're looking to do here is now our arrows, our forces, our resources, our focus is on creating more value. So here we see that we've pushed up and we've created more value. So going initially from the position of 100, what we see now is that the value on the table is maybe increased by even 200%. So we're going from the value of 100, maybe even up to 300. So we've created more value. Well done, us. So on the next slide, zooming out again, we'll see where it fits. And we'll also see some of the key topics that you need to learn how to use effectively. One is obviously relationships. Key to the success here is be able to build relationships. Share knowledge. We talked about knowledge as a source of power. I'll come back to that in a moment. But able to share knowledge, identify value. You've identified value from your own side, which is hard enough, but then you need to identify what value there is on their side and how to trade that value. And particularly, we're looking to be creative. Okay, thinking outside the box, but sitting down. And one way of doing this is not like the arrows are, they're pushing in the same direction. I'm not saying you need to sit next to your negotiation partner, call them partner rather than opponent is a good start. Not necessarily sit next to them. Traditionally, you'll sit opposite, and it'd be like a tug of war, pulling a rope. You know, who pulls the hardest gets the most of that 100 share. What we're actually saying now is that you're actually on the same team. So you can sit next to each other and look into the distance and say, okay, this is what we want to do. This is what we want to try to achieve. So you're actually working together now in partnership. And if it was a tug of war, pulling the rope, you'll be pulling on the same side of the rope. So you're going to work together effectively as a team to create this extra value. Slide 25, we see we're bringing the sources of power back into this here. Now we're going to link these sources of power win-win with the win-lose ones in a moment. But first, let's introduce the sources of win-win power in negotiation. Personality is still there, likability, those things, very important. Seeking knowledge, still very important, but now we're bringing the power of two, synergy. 2 + 2 makes 5. We're looking here together to create that value. Knowledge, rather than knowing what to hide and what to seek, knowing what to share and how to share knowledge is key here. And again, creativity, the power of creativity, brainstorming, working together, bouncing off each other to create ideas, options, potential and value. Much of this value and this power can be accessed, used best when you're outside the negotiation deal stress environment. So when you are negotiating, it is hard to work together in that collaborative way, because inevitably, as we'll see in a moment, there is going to be that fight for the value. We'll come back to that. So what we can do here is in our contract management. Okay, we set up the effective contract management, but ongoing, after the contract is signed, in place, implemented, we can work together with our negotiation partners, with our stakeholders involved to create this value. So we're running on a suboptimal contract, which is inevitable, which is usual, but now we're sitting together regularly, not just to monitor performance, okay, that's useful, but really to create value. In that environment, we're much more able to trust and to build on the relationship with the other party and work out how we can create the best value. Contract management is a key part of the delivery, of course, but the future negotiation effectiveness. Yeah, there are lots of negotiation value drivers that are important for us. So what is important for your business? Obviously, managing risk, and you could argue that managing risk is the key reason that we're here as procurement people. Yeah, to get the product in right time, right quality, etc. To secure the supply, so our business can deliver to its customers. Key. So risk management is a key area of value. And we can do a lot, obviously, with our suppliers. Many of the risks, perhaps majority of the risks to our business are from supply chain, from suppliers. So if we can work with suppliers for greater transparency, to work together to find solutions, to manage risk, then we're going to be very successful in creating value. Other sources of value, quality, of course. We can work together to improve quality. We can work together to find cost opportunities, whether it's logistics or in operations itself. We can work together to find other sources of value that are important to our business. One of the sustainability, of course, but one I'm thinking of in particular is innovation. Innovation itself is just new things, new ideas, but it's particularly many of our businesses are successful because we deliver to our customers. What do we deliver? Sometimes it's looking at cost, price, effective. Our customers buy from us because we're the cheapest. If that's the case, then much of the value won't be there. We'll be focusing more on winning the win-lose. If it's purely about price, unless we can work out ways of working with our suppliers to be much more cost effective. But innovation for me is really about delivering to our customers. It's working with suppliers to get their ideas, but to work together to create ideas that then we can pass on to our customers to make us unique to them, so we sell more at a much higher margin. That's where our businesses will be successful. We sell more and we can maintain or increase our margins. And that comes from many sources, but I would argue the main source comes from us in procurement. If we can bring ideas into our business, then that's a key part of our job, whether that's working with R&D, working with marketing or the engineers, or just grabbing the ideas from suppliers. Innovation is one of the key value areas, and that's it's far more important than pure price negotiations in many situations. And our last segment in the Pentagon, the effective negotiation, is where we win the win-win. So what we've gone from is from building the win-lose, understanding the key price and maybe one or two other variables, what that value is to us, and start making sure it's there and finding the opportunity to build it. Losing the win-lose, where we've been out-maneuvered, out-negotiated, to learning how to win the win-lose. From there, we realized that many relationships aren't just transactional. There's a lot of partnership opportunity there to create value. So there we looked at how we build this win-win. But when we build win-wins, what we're doing is leaving ourselves vulnerable. And we look at sources of power combined in a second. But we leave ourselves vulnerable. And we've got to get the best of both worlds. We've got to learn to build that win-win, create that value with the partners in our negotiations, but also make sure we get the best share. So if we look at that on the next slide, we'll see to move towards hero, we're going to have to focus on value, yes, but we're focusing on your value, our value here. So we see the arrows, we see our smaller blue one, but we see the big one from there. So we've got to persuade our negotiation partners to create value, but a lot of that value will come to us. So we'll see here the drawing, it leans towards our side. And if we look at slide 28, then our task then is to capture their value. So we're doing a few things here. We're building the win-win by creating the value. We're trying to push that value to be mostly beneficial to us, and then we're looking to capture that value. And if we see here, the value we've now captured is about 230 of 300. So remember, we started with 0 because we had no extra value. We thought we might get 20. We got 65 in the win-lose negotiation, but now we've created this value. If we got half the value or less than half, we would have been around 100, 150. But what we've done here is negotiated very effectively. We've managed to win the win-win and get the vast majority of value. So now 230 worth of value. So looking at the next slide, zooming out again, looking at the Pentagon, a couple of things we're trying to do here, not technical, more philosophical. Show the friend. So this is about you. You're showing the friend, you're showing how you're trustworthy, you can work together, create value, and share some of that value, and hide the foe. You've got to hide the fact that you are competing for this, but you are the friend, and to a certain degree you're the foe. But you see here that they've got 70. They started with 0. After the win-lose they had 35, but now working with you they've got 70. Now that would only be a problem if that figure was very small, or it'd be a problem if they knew what else was on the table, but they don't, because you've negotiated very effectively. You've hidden the foe, you've hidden the fact that you've taken the largest part of the share. You don't say afterwards, yeah, it's a brilliant deal for you, you've got all this and this and this, and you've got much less. Of course you don't. You say, great working together, tough negotiation, fantastic that we could collaborate on these opportunities. I'm looking forward to working with you. You've gained all this and we've gained this, limiting what you've gained, and they will go away thinking, job well done, which it was, but you've out-negotiated them. You partnered them, and you've also maneuvered them a little bit. So you've been really nice and a little bit not nice. But that's negotiation. Negotiation is not about getting what's fair. It's about getting what you negotiate. And we're business people. There's nothing wrong here. They've gained, but we've gained more. And if you weren't able to win the win-win, they will be. They don't come into this naive thinking, oh, this is nice, we'll have a chat and see what we can do. No, they're looking to get the biggest share possible too. They've got their targets, they've got their sales target, they've got their sales director putting pressure on them. They want to keep their job or get their promotion. So they are pushing back. So it's not a choice you have here, whether you can be nice and get half, or play the game and get more than half. It's play the game and get more than half, or have the game played against you. And remember this value here, okay, much of it can be captured by us in terms of value tracking, etc. But most of this value is going to our business. Our stakeholders are going to be delighted with what they've got here, because they've got a lot of whatever it is you started looking at in the build the win-win, when you started identifying what the value streams were. You've captured them. Your stakeholders are going to be really happy with the deal that you've made. So really well done. Yeah, and on slide 30, we're bringing the sources of power back in. We're combining the two circles into a sort of Venn diagram. We'll see all the sources of power here, and they're all important in terms of winning the win-win. Some are just there to create value, such as synergy, knowledge sharing, creativity. Some are here just to win value, alternatives, hiding knowledge, managing movement. But we also see the ones which are important for both personality and finding out more knowledge. And in our next slide, we're moving into winning strategies. And here we see, we've gone from 0 to hero, but some overriding strategies which can help us achieve. And these, I said, are linked partly to Kraljic as well. So for those who don't know Kraljic, it's worth exploring that more. So in the winning strategies, we have, first of all, on slide 32, we have transactional and leverage. Here we see this is where we have the win-lose environment, where there isn't much to negotiate over. We are using the power we have in terms of market, in terms of alternatives, where we can put force on the suppliers to compete, and this way we're going to find it fairly easy, if we negotiate effectively in the right environment, to push and get the largest share. We're at a little arrow here going upwards, as you can see. We're also going to spend a little bit of time trying to persuade the sales guys, the supplier, that there is some value in creating value for us. So we may demand some extra value, but mostly it's about pushing them back and getting the best price we can. And in slide 33, we see now another strategy is in the bottleneck monopolistic environment where we have very little power. So yes, our blue arrows are us again. We are still trying to push, but that's not the main focus. There isn't that much to push or that much to gain from pushing. What we're trying to do is create value, and inevitably much of that value will go to the supplier. But the more we create, the more we can win that, capture that. So in this scenario, in this strategy, bottleneck monopolistic, we are still competing, we are still pushing, but we're in a very weak position. So what we're trying to do is create value and trying to persuade them to create value too. And the last strategy we're looking at here is partnership and strategic. Now this is where the value is for us as buyers, as a company, and this is where our focus inevitably is going to be. And this is where, if you use Kraljich, the top right strategic box, this is where most of the value sits. It's either being there captured or often it's not. And when we're in the Kraljich strategic box, we have to realize that we do have power, but the supplier inevitably has some power too. But if we out-negotiate them, if we are very effective negotiators, focusing on the value, focusing on managing the risks in our supply chains, identifying those, managing those, looking at the opportunities in the contract management stage to work together, we see, yes, we can push for our success, but we can also drive for more value. And this obviously links to winning the win-win. We're trying to persuade them, the supplier, to create value for us or with us, and less on pushing us back. So here we can win the win-win and get the value that we need as a company. So takes us back to slide 35. Now the Pentagon is full with the path to go from zero round to hero, to go from having no extra value to having substantial extra value. And again, what's key is working with your business, your stakeholders, to identify what value you want, working with your supplier to create that value, and then effective negotiation to capture the majority of that power. And remember, we did this by focusing first on win-lose, and that's maybe where you'll end, because in many of your relationships, our win-lose relationships, it's transactional. There's not a lot of value there. It's about how well you create competition, how well you pressure, manage the negotiation to grab the majority of the value that is actually on the table. So we move around from building win-lose all the way down to the bottom to winning the win-lose. But we're here to talk also about the immense opportunity there is in win-win negotiations. Working longer term, collaboratively, your organization with their organization to create this extra value. But don't underestimate the risk involved in that, because if you just lay all your cards on the table, make yourself weak, then the other party will take advantage of you. That's what sales guys do. Sales guys are nice people, professional, etc., but they're tough. They're not there to be nice. They're there to make deals work, primarily for them. Like we start default win-lose, they start default win-lose. They are more interested often in selling value to us than we are in hearing the value. So we have to switch the switch, and we have to sit with them and work out what value they're offering, how to bring that into our business, and how to increase that by working with them longer term. But we also have at the same time to make sure that we win the win-lose. And I said in the middle, we have those winning strategies, simple ways of looking at the transactional leverage win-lose situation, moving through where we're weak, and then looking at partnership. And when we prepare for our negotiations, we do need to make sure that we invest in preparation, and there are some good preparation steps that you can learn with us, or maybe you've learned already, that makes preparation much more time efficient, but much more importantly, much more effective in your negotiations. So I'm not sure I'm going to be here to answer your questions. I hope so. But if not, thank you very much for listening. And if I am, you will hear now. But I hope you enjoyed the webinar as it is so far, looking at modeling how we progress through a negotiation. And in many situations in life, it's about it's stepping back, looking at it from above. And this is looking at the negotiation from above. We tend to negotiate, I wouldn't say blind, but we tend to negotiate without really knowing what's going on. It's like negotiating in a room where the light switch is off. What we've done here, or tried to do here at least, is switch the light on, show you what's going on in the negotiation. So it gives you much more opportunity to see what you're doing well, lots of things, what you're doing wrong, probably lots of things too, and learn to improve. So where you need to focus. So this is more strategic, but we've dived into a bit of the tactics of negotiation. And I hope that helps you be more effective in your future negotiations and get more win-win outcomes. So thanks very much for listening. Hopefully I'll speak to you in a moment. But anyway, good luck with your effective negotiations.